Oh yeah, I have actually switched back from PipeWire to PulseAudio. So if anything seems off in this episode with levels or anything, then that's gonna be why. I was really liking PipeWire. PipeWire is, for the most part, really, really good, and until I had one issue that really set me off, I was more than happy to keep using it. The issue that I had is, for some reason, I couldn't capture desktop audio. Not just like, oh, the device was defaulting to something different. No, I would set it to the correct device. I would have audio playing in my earphones, but OBS just would not capture it. I don't know why it wasn't capturing. I don't know what the I don't what could have been the problem. I did restarts, I did reinstalls of PipeWire. No matter what I did, it just refused to start working. And the big deal with desktop audio is I need desktop audio to be able to do like my gameplay capture, whether that be from my PS4. Actually, PS4 I can get around because I can just capture the capture card as a microphone device, and microphones were being captured just fine. Uh, but if I want to do something like, say, play Dead Cells, I couldn't do that. So I realized as soon as this problem started cropping up, I had to deal with it basically as quickly as possible. And yeah, right now it's just not there. I've swapped back, and so far PipeWire is as I remember it. This is one of the nice things about PipeWire. Sorry, I swapped back to PulseAudio, and it's just as okay as I remember it. One of the nice things about PulseAudio, unlike PipeWire, is PulseAudio, even though it's a bit of a mess in some places, it's a fairly stable mess. Like, the problems that exist with PulseAudio, and they'll probably be there 6 months down the line, and anything that works nicely will probably still be working nicely 6 months down the line as well. PipeWire is still very, very early software, and being early software, it's bound to change a lot, which is good in terms of it getting new features and improving, but it does give you a bit of I guess a bit of an inconsistent experience. So I've had things like the way that my audio capture was even working when it was working. So there was one point where I would capture my desktop audio, and if I raised and lowered the master volume, it would raise and lower the volume being captured inside of OBS. That makes sense. It's capturing the level that I'm actually hearing. After that, though, it stopped worrying about the master volume and just worried about the volume of that specific output. So I could change the master volume as much as I wanted. I could even mute the master volume and it would still capture that audio completely fine. This is the way I preferred it, but honestly, either way was going to work perfectly fine as long as I knew one of them was going to be working. Whichever method it was going to be using, as long as it sticks with that, I don't care. I don't care about anything else. But it wasn't sticking with that. It was changing. And I don't know what was causing it to change. It just seemed like every couple of updates, someone changed something and it was completely different. I don't know why. So PulseAudio doesn't have that problem. Also, PipeWire was just giving me some other issues like some popping audio and crackling audio and things like that, which still are occasionally present inside of PulseAudio, sorry, but they're not as prevalent. I could have avoided them anyway. Like, the problems were mainly being caused by the fact that I have a soundbar, and I occasionally leave the soundbar plugged in. And if I leave the soundbar plugged in and turned on, well, I always leave it plugged in. If I leave it turned on, it's not sure which output to actually use and swaps back the output as soon as audio starts playing. Once the audio is playing, though, it's not an issue. It's just at the start of the audio playing can be a bit of an issue. But for now, I'm going to be on PipeWire. It's probably going to be like... for now, I'm going to be on PulseAudio, and it's probably going to be like that for the foreseeable future. I'll probably go back to PipeWire in a couple of months, see if anything's really improved. If it has, I'll stick with it. If it hasn't, back to Pulse it is. But this does really worry me because my dog is barking now. Okay, I'll go deal with the dog, and then I'll finish this. Turns out she was barking because my housemate just got home. Anyway, um, distros are starting to actually ship PipeWire as the default. So both Ubuntu and Fedora. Fedora does make sense because PipeWire is being developed by Red Hat. Red Hat makes Fedora. Makes sense that that's going to be their testing distro. But Ubuntu over on, I don't think it's even just on the Wayland side. I think that Ubuntu is going to start shipping PipeWire as the default all around. I'm pretty sure. I could be mistaken. Yeah, it's 2104 uses has officially enabled support for PipeWire, and 2204 use PipeWire, but probably not. I know under the Wayland release though, PipeWire actually is installed as the default. I don't know if that removes the PulseAudio server. If it does, that's a problem. Because what's going to happen is PipeWire is going to break again. And when PipeWire breaks, we're going to have the exact same problem that we had when PulseAudio was being swapped in over from just plain ULSA. And that is that it's a fucking mess. And when something is an absolute mess like that and distros start shipping it as the default, what ends up happening is, for its entire existence, it ends up having a really, really bad rap. This is why, even though PulseAudio is, perfectly fine at this point, it has some issues, but it's perfectly fine. It still has a terrible rap, because early on, there were distros shipping with broken configurations. It just generally didn't work even with a good configuration, with a lot of hardware setups. It had issues. This is a problem that is going to be repeated if distros like, or if maintainers like Canonical and Red Hat aren't being careful. Fedora, I think, yeah, as I said, Fedora, it makes sense as a testing distro, and I think having PipeWire there as an option is always a good option. But it should be an option. Wayland makes it a bit harder. So the problem with the Wayland side is that PipeWire is used for more than just doing audio. PipeWire is also a video. What would be the word for it? So it's like, it's an audio sound system and like a video. It handles video streams, similar to something like GStreamer. I think GStreamer handles video, but anyway, it handles video streams. You need that on Wayland because Wayland doesn't have a video API, unlike Xorg, where you can just be like, I want to capture that window, or capture my desktop. That's just not a thing that can be done on Wayland. Wayland just doesn't have a capture API like that. This is fine most of the time, but it means things like OBS didn't function. It does function now through PipeWire. You couldn't do things like screen capture if you're using things like Discord. It was just an overall absolute mess. It's still going to be a mess in the future, though. I hope that whatever Ubuntu and Fedora are doing ends up being stable. Yeah. They might, Ubuntu honestly might go back to PulseAudio afterwards. Yeah, so 2104 will try Wayland by default, and we'll have PipeWire on that. I know the Wayland stuff won't be default. I know it came out like 2 months ago, but it's not default if you have an NVIDIA card, because while NVIDIA works fine with native Wayland, the problem that Wayland has with NVIDIA stuff is anything running through X Wayland is not GPU accelerated. And the problem with that is a lot of what you run on Wayland is through X Wayland. It's the exact same problem you get when you're doing stuff with Linux audio, where a lot of the stuff you're doing, if you're running PipeWire, isn't going to be using PipeWire. It's going to be running PulseAudio, PipeWire PulseAudio, or it's going to be running PipeWire ULSA or PipeWire Jack, which means it's a fucking mess. It means it's a mess, and is maintaining a maintainer's nightmare. So I hope the best for PipeWire, and I hope the PipeWire ends up stabilizing more and get some. Also, it needs better documentation. The documentation for PipeWire at this stage is barely functional, to say the least. Mostly missing to be more accurate. So it needs work. Hopefully it gets it. It looks like it's getting it. With, yeah, that I can sit here and complain all day about PipeWire, but I know that there's going to be people who say, oh, my install of PipeWire is perfectly fine, and good for you. I hope it is perfectly fine, but it's not perfectly fine on every configuration, and that's the problem. It needs to be perfectly fine on everything, or most things. Like Windows Audio, for example, no one complains like, oh, my earphones don't work on this computer. That's just not a thing. That's where I would like Linux Audio to be at some point. Just to be as stable as Windows Audio, or as stable as macOS Audio, and just works. Just working is all I could ask for. I don't need it to be amazing. I don't need it to be something that I could write home about. I just need it to work.